We recently put out a spec commercial for Synology, and it was a pretty fun project, and we also learned a lot in terms of how to script, light, and shoot funny style commercials such as this one. In this video, I'm going to cover those topics, as well as break down the commercial from start to finish. The first topic I'm going to cover is the general idea of this project and how it was scripted. This day and age, anybody can relate with the topic of media storage. And honestly, this video we felt a lot of people in our audience could relate with. And that's the first thing when it comes to making commercials like this. What topic can the viewer relate with? In this case, it's the frustration of media storage and editing off external hard drives. And that introduces our characters, the frustrated editor, me in this case, and the fellow team member who insists that we continue just to buy drives, which is Adrian. We're going for the type of ad where we don't even mention the product in the video, as the viewer has to come to the realization of what the product is being advertised. In my opinion, this is one of the best ways of advertising. What we are doing is we're introducing problems that the product will solve. This allows the viewer to question what the ad is about, and in turn keeps their interest. We had the general idea of what we wanted to do, but we kind of scripted it on the fly. And the way we did that is we listed the problems that the NAS system will solve, and then scripted it based off of that, which was pretty straightforward. And there's only really 4 shots in this: the over-the-shoulder shot, the intro and outro wide, which are the same shot, medium shot of me, as well as the medium shot of Adrian. Looking at the first shot, this is introducing the problem, so I'm actually looking at hard drives in this case. And for composition, it's a standard over-the-shoulder shot, pretty basic. The only thing with this over-the-shoulder shots is that you want the shoulder and obviously the side of my face in the foreground here. This just adds depth to the image, and with the separation, you can see that fall off on there. There's not much lighting here, it's just the screen, it's super flat. But what we also wanted to do is show the frustration of the editor, so we have so many different tabs open across here just to add to the frustration and what's going on in the whole skit. Now the next shot here is the intro shot. So we wanted a wide with the table in the center of the frame, and then we have our light coming from the top. I'm going to talk about lighting next. But in terms of composition, we have a bunch of things in the foreground that draw our eye to the center of the frame. So if we look at this direction of the counter, that's leading our eyes to the center, and then just the lines in the door frame as well. This is just classic composition when we're talking about leading lines. And then we also have some sort of a frame that draws our eyes to the center as well, shooting through the wall on the side with the door, as well as this countertop. This is the same thing as the outro. We would prefer that if this was a dolly shot, so we had a dolly in for the intro and then a dolly out for the outro, but we're just shooting this on a tripod. So what we ended up doing is just adding zoom in post. The first medium shot we're gonna look at is of myself, and this was a tricky one to actually set up in terms of composition because we were shooting against a flat wall. So it was really hard to get that separation and get that depth. So what we're trying to do is, again, shoot in the L of the room. So we're shooting into that corner, and that's going to give us the most separation. And we wanted to add a bunch of things in the foreground so you have that depth and interest in the frame. So in the foreground here, we have this laptop, and then we have my laptop, and then my hands talking. And then, as I said, I'm on the left third. So if we were to put grids up on this, you could see that I'm right in that center of that grid. And yeah, that was pretty much it in terms of composition with this. So the next thing that you're going to see is when we look at Adrian's frame. Adrian is in the right third of this. Now this is tricky when it comes to dialogue scenes, and we don't have a lot of experience when doing these skits like this, so we were just going off of basic composition, what we like to do in terms of putting our subject on the third. But generally you don't really want to do this because you don't want your viewer's attention to go back and forth between thirds. You kind of really want it in the center. I'm not saying dead center, but relatively, so the eyes of the viewer aren't shifting so much. So if we were to reshoot this, we would put them kind of towards the center and not so much heavily on that right or left third. But going into the composition, again, we are shooting into the L of the room, so this is going to give us the most depth. And then we just have a lot of visual interests going on here, and then again, we're playing with the leading lines of the room. So we have this edge right here that's pointing right to Adrian. So my eyes are never going to be looking at this left side of frame because I just see that line and I go right to him. And then again, we have these laptops in the foreground, which gives us more even depth. And then this is just a super nice image in terms of the separation between the subject, and it just looks really great in terms of the whole conversation piece. Next thing we're going to talk about is lighting, and we found that this set was pretty difficult to light. And this was mainly because of the location of the table and finding an interesting frame while shooting into that flat wall of myself, and then finding an interesting frame for Adrian as well. The first thing we did was light for the wide. This is something we do all the time because the wide is the hardest to light. Once you have the wide generally lit, you only really have to add a neg or a bounce card to add shape to your subject. For this shoot, we used the Nanlite Mix Panel 150, 2 Nanlite Pavo tubes, a 60B with a projector mount, and a set of Aperture MCs with softboxes. To light the table, and as well as the subjects, we taped 2 of the MCs to the ceiling, and to kill the spill, we use a skirt around those light sources. This shapes the light into the table, as well as kills the spill going on the walls of the room. We used 2 Pavo tubes, one pointed at the wall behind the counter, and the other on the corner to give more ambient levels in the room. Lastly, we used the 60B on a projector to add levels to the room as well. We had the 60B pointed up in the ceiling or on the floor at times to bounce light, as bounce light is a super soft source. We used the mix panel as our main key light, and we had to use some cutters and nets just to kill the spill going on the wall. So we had the Aperture's MCs taped up to the ceiling, and then we had little soft boxes on them, and then we had a skirt that was all around it. The skirt had a reflective material in the inside, so all the light that was spilling from the lights would bounce directly back down onto the table. And you can even see the light source right at the top there. We weren't really concerned about this because it looked pretty natural. And then that was giving the main key on myself and Adrian. And then we had our positions slightly forward from that light, so we were shooting on the dark side of our faces. And you can see this mainly on Adrian here, and then you can see it on me a little bit, but you see that light coming in from the top there. The laptops were acting kind of as practicals and light sources to fill in other areas, and it just added to the whole feel of it because we're working on our laptops. The 2 Pavo tubes that we're using, one was kicked back right here, and then this was aimed at the wall, and then this was giving our ambient back into the room, as you can see here, because these walls were pretty dark, so we had to add light back into it. And then we also had another Pavo tube right here, and this was bouncing back onto this wall. Again, it was white like the other walls you see here, and then that was filling in the back over here. And then what we did with the 60B is we had it in the room, and then we had it shining up into the ceiling, and you can see that gradient over here, and then this was in the back corner of the room. And then this was just adding more light to the scene, as well as giving more ambient room tone. Going into the medium shot of me, this is basically the same setup. We threw a little Nanlite Pavo tube, one of those small ones in the back, and then we shot it against the wall and also up. This is just adding levels to the back so it's not completely falling off. Found this light was a little too strong, so we had to kind of put a little diffusion on it as well just to stop it down. And then on here, on camera right side, and then this is actor's left side, we have the Mix Panel 150, and these lights are generally were set at 2700 Kelvin. This is a warmer tone to the whole piece as well because it's an evening scene. And then we have that light shining down on me. But the only thing that was happening here, as you can see the light cutting my face, is that it was spilling all on this wall. So what we had to do is we had to add a cutter to the left side of the panel. So if I'm actually looking at the panel now, we added a frame of black cloth here on a little C-stand, and then that was cutting all the light, so only half of the actual mix panel was outputting light. And then that just kills all the spill coming on that wall because it looked really sourcey and really hot. So that's a cool thing we learned about all these cutters, fabrics, and stuff we can use to even shape the light even more. Then we move over to Adrian. Again, we had that mix panel just pointed at him. And then we didn't really have to cut anything. I believe we kept the cutter on, but it wasn't needed because there was so much room back here that none of the light was spilling back on. So that is giving us a nice shape to the face. And then you can see that catch light right in his eyes, as well as that gradient over onto his shadow side, which is pretty nice as well. I believe his shirt was too hot, so we actually added a net and a grid to the bottom just to cut all that light that was spilling onto his shirt. For the practicals in this is pretty nice. We just have some candle lights in the background Again, this is just something that was in the house. We were using Justin's house at the time, and we just decided to keep them in. They look nice, and they're adding some spill onto the back here, as you can see. And then there was an actual rock lamp back here that's giving us a nice practical there. And then this is the same bounce source of light by the 60. Just right up into the ceiling. And then you can see that the light is bounced up in the ceiling by this hard cut of this shadow here. And that's pretty much going to do it for this video. Definitely Adrian and I aren't actors, to say none the least. And in terms of script writing, we're pretty much amateurs when it comes to this, but we thought of the idea and we thought it was a good video to share as well break down. A lot of key concepts in here that we learned and we're going to apply to our actual commercial shoots that we do all the time. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos or any commercial ideas like this, please let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.